How's it going, everybody? Welcome back into the channel, and today we're going to be talking some more about distance. Now, previously on this channel, we've gone over how to throw far, but today we're going to talk about something arguably more important, and that's what to be throwing. The reason being is because disc golf is designed in a way with the flight number system to kind of be a little confusing. We have this speed system from 1 through up to 14 now, and the normal mind that enters disc golf will see a system that looks intuitive, think, okay, lower number of speed equals less, not as far flying disc, and then higher number of speed must be the furthest flying disc. That is how things would compute to the intuitive mind as you enter disc golf for the first time, but that couldn't be further from the truth. As many of you more experienced players now know, those faster speed discs are not for everybody, and I'm going to explain why. A faster speed disc typically means the rim is wider, and the key bit to know here is that these discs take more arm speed to get up to speed and actually get the full potential of their flight. That is why picking a max distance driver is not all about finding the fastest disc out there. It's about finding the one that matches your arm speed and the way you like to throw the disc. So what I've done here is I've grabbed a selection of different drivers, starting from the most beginner friendly up to the advanced, to kind of try and find which range works for you as far as selecting that disc that's going to fly furthest from you on the disc golf course. I've got 4 different groupings of discs, each of these having its own strengths and weaknesses for you to choose from. But remember, like most of these videos where I recommend discs, there are lots that fit in these categories, but disc selecting can be very overwhelming. So I've picked out a few from each category and each arm speed that I think will work out for you, so you don't have to do all that browsing. What we're going to start with is the beginner drivers. Now, I'll reiterate, when you first get into disc golf, there's no need to touch a driver. Now, a lot of us do, and that's just the way things are. It says driver, you know, it sounds fun. They're fun to throw, and I get that. And to be honest, as long as you have a decent amount of arm speed as a beginner, you might be able to maneuver a slower, more beginner driver, but it's best to stay to those putters and mid-ranges. So this video starts when you've gotten to the point in your journey where you feel like throwing the disc further should be an objective for you to chase. Now, what you'll be seeing as I talk about each of these discs are shots that I threw out in the field with them to demonstrate. And the important thing to note is with each of these shots, you may see me throw on different angles and different speeds because I'm trying to emulate the best throw to get the most out of the disc I'm presenting. Obviously, some of these beginner discs, such as this diamond, are not the right disc for me to get max distance. But what I'm showing you with the throws in the field is that there is a way for this disc to be thrown at a lower arm speed or with some hyzer to get it a max distance flight. I just want to show you that there's a lot of discs that can accomplish similar distance flights if you throw them the certain way in order to kind of emulate all the different arm speeds I'm trying to talk to here. So this is our most beginner category, and I've got 3 discs here that kind of demonstrate this. The first one here is this Innova DX Leopard. Now, I grabbed this one because this was my first driver. This came with my Innova starter set, and I genuinely believe, even though it was kind of forced upon me there, it was the one that was given in a starter set, this is a great first driver. It always has been. Typically you get them in the lighter weights. I think that is a key thing to mention with all of these discs, is especially for the more beginner arms, lighter weights are going to be a lot easier and you should toy around with them for sure. So a lighter weight DX Leopard, just like this, is a great disc to start with. Typically, you're going to be able to get some kind of straight flight out of it. As you learn the disc and get better, you'll work it into a hyzer flip to turn. You'll start to get those more distance flights, and this should be your starting point. Some other molds I have here. This is the Latitude 64 Diamond. I've said for a while now, this is my favorite mold to recommend as a first driver because it is super, super understable. But if you're throwing it correctly, even if you have a bit of arm speed, you're going to get good flights out of this disc. And if you can't flip this driver over, you shouldn't go on to any other drivers. This should be the one that is the test for you. You can get them in lightweights. They're incredibly understable, a nice thin rim to grab onto. If you can't flip this driver, don't move any further. Stick with it until you can, and that's when you can upgrade. Now, a little more stable disc I have in this category is this Star It from Innova. Has a little bit of a chunkier rim in the hand and a little bit more stability, especially in this premium plastic here. And they're easier to find in heavier weights. But once again, you have a disc that has a slower arm speed. I would say most of these shots you see landing out in the field with these discs are going to be just over 300 feet, maybe slightly below. And when you're just starting out, that's a great place to be with your distance. Just trying to break that 300-foot mark, and you can get plenty enough to do that out of these 3 discs right here. So we've got the DX Leopard, this baseline diamond here from Latitude 64, and the Star It. Love these for first drivers and those beginners trying to learn to throw further shots. There are others out there like it, but these are 3 that I prefer. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next category, sort of the novice moving into intermediate arm speed category. And remember, not all of these have to do with your skill level. This is pretty much only related to arm speed. Now, a lot of people throwing those beginner drivers are going to be beginners or maybe children or older folks that just can't get the arm speed anymore. But as we move up, these drivers and on, there's really no shame in throwing them no matter how long you've been playing disc golf or how good you are. This is all about matching your arm speed and doing that appropriately. Because remember, a disc that isn't up to speed is not going to realize its potential. And that means that something like this Passion in 8-speed could go much further than a 14-speed Ballista Pro. But that's where we'll start here in this category with the Passion. An incredible, incredible disc. It may be unassuming as a far-flying driver. It has that chunkier feel in the hand. But I have seldom seen a driver that flies like this one. With a decent bit of arm speed, maybe if you're in that 350 to 370 category, you can start it on hyzer and pop it up. It's going to coast and coast forever with a minimum fade. And if you have a little bit of a lower arm speed, if you're just entering this category of drivers, you can give it a little bit of anhyzer or throw it flat, and you're going to get a very agreeable and friendly flight out of this disc. It's very forgiving. It's not going to burn you out there. I love the Passion from Discraft. I've got to get this thing in my bag because everybody else is throwing them and they rock. In fact, I just did a little bit of a coaching session with a gentleman the other night who had a Passion in his bag, and it was incredible for him. He threw it off almost every tee. This disc rocks. Another disc in this category I love is the Era. This disc was the first one from Finish Line Discs, and it absolutely blew me away when this thing first came out. I just remember throwing some of the farthest shots I'd ever thrown with any disc with this Era, which is only, I believe they classify this as a 9-speed. This one doesn't have the numbers, but I think it's a 9 or 10 speed maybe, but not a super wide driver. Another disc like the Passion where the faster arm speeds, you can give it a little bit of hyzer. If not, throw it flat with a little bit of anhyzer. But I would say this is a slight step up from the Passion. It needs a little bit more speed, but when you hit this thing, it is incredible. It loves to coast over to the right before finishing back at the end. It goes super, super far, has tons of glide, just wants to stay in the air. And this is another disc. I mean, this is one that you can really fall in love with as the furthest driver in your bag. Like, you might get to this, throw it a few times, and be like, I don't need anything faster. The Era just bombs. It's a stupendous disc. And then the last one I have in this category, I put in here for a reason. So this is the Undertaker. This is a good example of a disc, and the Passion's kind of this way too, where a lot of people have a perception about this disc. I think a lot of people know the Undertaker because Paul McBeth threw it a lot in his heyday with Discraft, is still throwing it now, but he really loved it early in his Discraft days. And you see certain pros throw this disc as a very controlled driver. And that's a big thing with disc golf discs and picking them out is you develop stigmas watching the pros throw these discs, but in reality, they throw a lot different than we do. They have a ton of arm speed. You probably aren't at that level, especially if you're zeroed in on this category in this particular video. But don't let that get to you. The Undertaker, if you have a little bit of a lower arm speed, if you're just trying to push 350 feet or so, this could be the perfect distance driver for you. You're going to be able to get awesome lines out of this. Just like the other two, very similar vibe. If you have a little bit of a faster arm, maybe you get it out there 370, 380. This is a great one to put on a little bit of hyzer. But if you're not quite there yet, if you're just getting towards 350, 340, you can get good anhyzer S lines out of this. It's a very easy disc to hold on to, a thin rim in the hand, and a ton of glide as well. And this disc, it really moves. As soon as it comes out of your hand, it just gets going. So yeah, that's kind of our next category. And one of my favorite categories of this video is this category, because I think it's so overlooked, because a lot of people who would benefit from throwing these speed discs as their fastest discs are the people that have just enough arm speed to convince themselves they need that 12 or 13 speed, but you really probably don't. You can get just as much out of these, hit more fairways, throw further shots down the fairway. And I think, the fairway driver in general, people just hear fairway driver and they think control, accuracy, but you can use these for distance. You really can. The Passion, the Era, and the Undertaker are all great options in this category. Okay, on to our next level up here. This is kind of that intermediate to getting to advanced level arm speed. A lot of people that fall in this category are going to be those who do throw really hard, but don't really need that final. I mean, I've said this a lot of times. But the difference between an 11 speed and a 14 speed is so much less than you would think in a golf sense. Even when you're throwing for distance, it might only be 20 to 25 feet. And if you don't have that upper level of arm speed, if you're not quite there, you actually might get the 11 speed to go farther. So that's important to consider. This category has some of my favorite molds, new and older ones, that I'm going to talk about. And also I did throw a disc into this category that is a faster one, and I'll tell you why in a second here. So starting out, we have 3 very similar discs here. My favorite mold of all time, probably, in the Star Wraith from Innova. This disc, it can do it all. There are so many players who could benefit from having this in their bag and not disking up to that Destroyer or that Boss or that Nuke, just settling here at the 11-speed Wraith. It's a little bit narrow in their hands, a little bit more controllable. You can get great hyzer flip lines out of this, great S lines. It beats in wonderfully, starts out usually with a bit of stability, beats into a great disc. The Wraith is just so fantastic. It's been such a consistent disc for me for years and years and years of playing. And like I said, this is a disc that is going to thrive in a player that's pushing the upper 300s of distance, and that's kind of where they're capped. That's where these really fall into place. Next, we have one of the closest things you can get to a Wraith out there, and that is the Grace from Latitude 64. Loved this disc since it was released. This is one of the earlier runs here, but I've had a few in my bag. I actually just lost one, unfortunately. That was in my bag for quite a few months. I've just been relying on it as a workhorse hyzer flip disc, but for distance, these things have tons of potential. They fly just like the Wraith, in my opinion, but a hair flippier, and I think they beat in a bit quicker. So if you've tried the Wraith and you don't know if you're quite there yet because they start out a little bit too overstable for you, maybe check out the Grace, because I think it's a little bit more friendly. And they do beat in a bit quicker to where you can get them to a nice, more understable flight and toy around with those lines some more. But I love this disc. It's awesome in this Royal Grand Plastic as well. These are fantastic. A new mold that I've got here is the Page Pierce Drive. This is probably just one more step down in friendliness from the Grace, I would say. Right out of the box, these usually flip up, but this is just another one where it's comfy in the hand. It may not feel like you've got this huge potential distance in your hand because you're used to grabbing onto those 12 and 13 speeds. I think a lot of people, as I say that, in this category, or should be throwing in this category, are people that are for sure throwing the faster rim discs and have maybe been tricked into believing that that is going to be the best thing for their game. But every once in a while, if you're unsure, just take a step down, throw something like this Drive, smooth the disc out there, and you're going to get more effortless distance. You're not going to have to muscle discs over on Anheuser as much. You can just pop it out there, give it it'll give you a nice glidey flight. Love the Drive from Discraft. This thing gives a ton of distance without a lot of effort. And then the last disc I have in here, I wanted to mention because this is a bit different than my other recommendations. This is a Nuke SS. So one other thing I wanted to mention with the drivers is, I talk about the wide rim a lot because that does a lot of times, when you're shopping for this kind of disc, a distance driver, the wide rim is going to equate to stability. It's going to give you problems. But let's say you're somebody who's a larger individual. You have large hands. You don't have an issue getting around the wider rim drivers. That doesn't bother you. And you actually like the feel of them, because I do like the feel of a wider rim driver. I know some people do actually prefer that to getting their hands on the skinnier mid-ranges, putters, fairways. And so I wanted to throw in the Nuke SS because here's a disc that does have that wide rim, but is very, very easy to throw. It has so much understability that you can pop it out very smoothly. I would say with 330 to 350 feet of power, you can throw it out there with a slight bit of hyzer and get a pretty full flight out of this disc. So if you're somebody who wants the wider rim drivers in your bag, but you don't feel like you're getting quite a full flight out of the disc, you don't have enough arm strength to do that, but you like the wide rim, maybe check out something that's just really understable, like a Nuke SS here. There are other examples of that as well. Maybe something like a Shrike from Innova, not quite as flippy as this, but another example of that. That's something to keep in mind. And a lot of times these discs aren't as popular because, like I said, people love throwing the big names. They love the Destroyers and such, and those discs are awesome, but if you're looking to get the most out of the plastic with what arm speed you're working with, this could be something for you. All right, and then last but not least, I am going to talk about kind of the advanced to pro category here, those with a lot of arm speed, good technique, because this video is for everybody. I know a lot of it's catered towards those kind of finding themselves and deciding what driver is too much driver or not enough driver, but there are some of us who've been playing disc golf longer or have picked it up quick and have a great arm. and you want to know what the best distance drivers are for that as well. And honestly, when looking for distance, this is a great lineup right here. You've got the Innova Destroyer. I know I've been talking a lot of smack about it, but it is an incredible disc if you have the arm to throw it. The Nuke from Discraft, just one of the fastest discs I've ever thrown. The thing just accelerates out of your hand like nothing else. It jumps off your hand. And then the Ballista Pro. This is one of the most distance-ready discs from the second you buy it that you'll ever see. All three of these discs share the characteristic that they do need speed to get the most out of it. Even if you're taking your Ballista Pro and you're knifing it over on Anheuser just to get a flight out of it, if you're not giving it enough speed, yeah, it may have done a somewhat full flight, but you didn't push it out there as far as you needed. Realistically, when you're throwing far distance shots, you should never, at least in a golf line sense, you should never be throwing any shots that have to be thrown on like this much Anheuser. That's like a distance competition line. But if you can't get a disc to do a good flight with just maybe slight Anheuser or anything into the flat to hyzer range, then it's probably too much disc for you. All three of these are great options. Love the Ballista Pro, probably the most understable of the bunch, but super, super fast. Nukes, they've been around forever. Like I said, they just jump out of your hand. I think one of the fastest and furthest flying discs I've ever thrown. And then the Destroyer, the old favorite. And I will say about this, like the Destroyer especially, when these are new, you better have 450 to 500 feet of power if you're going to be using it as your distance flying disc. Typically, they need to beat in a little bit for us mere mortals that can just kind of push over that 400 boundary. That's kind of where I'm at. But they do become great tools for the right arms especially. All right, so those were the drivers I had to recommend. As always, I'd love for you to recommend your favorite disc. I didn't have any gyro in this video. I know that'll probably upset somebody. You know what? I should grab one real quick. It's actually perfect. I have one right behind me. If I wanted to throw another a gyro disc to get some representation into that second to last category I mentioned, the Fission Photon, this is a awesome distance disc for people in that category. This thing rocks. Had to make sure I gave a little gyro plug because I was realizing I was skimping a little bit. I know the comments don't love that. But make sure to comment down below. Obviously, there's so many options. Those are just some ones that I picked out. What's your favorite disc for the arm speed you have? Kind of let me know what your arm speed is, what disc you're loving for that slot. And hey, if you're down there and you see some people looking for disc recommendations and I don't see it, hop in there, recommend some discs. You know, let's all help each other out and find the discs that work best for our games, because it's not always the super fast ones, or for some of you, maybe it is. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. We're so close to 25,000 subscribers, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and hit that like button as well. I'm going to be doing a massive giveaway at 25K. And you need to be subscribed to get in on that. With that being said, I will see you next Monday with another video. I have a really fun one coming up next Monday, so I hope you're there to watch it. We'll see you then.